So there was a tweet that was being retweeted last week. I ended up with it from one of my kids, my eldest son, who lives in Seattle. He's like, check this out. I'm like, oh, that is a good one. And my kid said, Dad, you should podcast this. He does listen to some of my content. My youngest one, not so much, but he's got other stuff he's working on. So who wants to listen to their dad talk more anyway, right? So this is an entertaining one, if nothing else. And if you get the chance to watch this video, watch it with your own discretion. It's not crazy off the hook. But what's crazy off the hook is that it's just so nonchalant. You are watching an intersection in Seattle in the Central District. And the title from the Post Millennial was, you got to watch this. Seattle man with self-inflicted knife wound exposes himself, and it should say exposes himself, and continues urinating on the public street after setting car on fire, then continues to stab self in neck when police arrive. That is literally what's going on. So picture this. You're at an intersection of a busy street in an urban setting. You got a lot of, apartments around, mid-rises. You've got stores. This happened right in front of a gym, an F45 gym, kind of one of those training center type deals. You've got other residential and you've got some commercial area space. You got people walking around. And so somebody captures this whole scene unfolding. They're shooting video out of their window at kind of a diagonal angle, but they're looking right at this dude who's got his back up against the wall. His pants and his underwear are down like knee height. I mean, he's got a coat on and a shirt on, sunglasses, and he's just kind of standing there with his back against the building wall, looking across the intersection as his car just goes up in flames. He had doused his car in flames. He had doused himself in gasoline. He starts the car on fire, walks across the intersection diagonally, stands up against a building, and takes the longest whiz that you have ever seen, while simultaneously stabbing himself in the neck. Cops come, and he's got like a 3 or 4 inch blade, and he stabs himself in the neck a couple more times. Clearly, this guy is on drugs and is having he's having a meltdown for sure. So the cops end up saving him. That's the only really good thing that happens here. The rest of this is just an example of what happens when you dump a whole bunch of people probably out in the street who have mental issues. Whether this guy has mental issues outside of his drugs, I don't know. This is a prime example of the new meth that is out there that makes people literally psychotic. This guy doesn't look like your typical person on the street with no shoes, no shirt, and just kind of, ranging around doing weird stuff. He looks like he's got a nice haircut. He's got sunglasses on. But the whole standing at a public intersection and taking a whiz while you watch your car burn up in flames while simultaneously stabbing yourself in the neck, I mean, only in Seattle, right? I mean, hashtag Seattle is thriving. So many comments on this. And this video was watched about 1.6 million times at last time I checked. What an event happening in Seattle. And what's crazy is that this is just, it's a little outside of the norm. I got to admit, this is a little outside of the norm, but it's not that wildly off track with other crazy stuff that happens with the enormous amounts of homelessness and drugs that are being taken and sold and bought and all of that, and stuff being, stolen. All of this goes together. So now you've got this prime example of, all right, that's an example of what happens if you let drugs just kind of go. You decriminalize drugs, you decriminalize having drugs, you decriminalize taking them. Hey, when things get really bad and you can't get into your veins, put this up your rear end. And the city literally with taxpayer dollars funds these programs where you can come up with different ways to give those veins a break that might need a little rest because you've been working them hard. I mean, you've literally got this stuff going on, and we wonder how we get there. Well, I mean, Seattle's pretty normal otherwise, but, you know, I mean, we did do a little decriminalization. We did do a little defunding of the police. Yeah, prosecutors don't really, I mean, they're okay with this. They're okay with the dude stabbing himself in the neck. He's only hurting himself. And literally strangers are walking by. Could you imagine turning the corner, looking over, and there's a guy with his dong hanging out. He's taking a huge whiz. And he's got a knife in one hand and he's kind of jabbing himself in the neck. And he's watching the car that's on fire across the intersection. And it's his damn car. And that's literally what we've got going on here. Seattle is thriving. I mean, we are doing some strong work here. And I don't care if you are a social worker and you're saying, but that guy needs to be reached out to and helped. Yeah, he's on some drugs. He's on some meth for sure. So whether he's having a breakdown or not, yeah, but you got to blame this strictly on a society that is letting this craziness happen. I want to point something out. This is happening in Seattle. You don't see this kind of horseshit happening in Bellevue. There's a reason for that. We don't encourage drug use and just being altogether whacked out on whatever comes along and, you know, just, it's okay. We know that you can't get off the stuff, so we're just going to encourage you. Here's a free needle. Here's a clean needle. Here's all this other. Here's food, whatever. And this guy probably isn't even homeless if he's got a nice car and, you know, he looks decent, but he's on some kind of bender. He's on some kind of bender because when the police came and he jabbed himself a couple more times in the neck, that kind of gives you an indication. Not all was firing correctly. His piston order, he needed a little timing. You need a little timing belt checkup, right? So in the video posted by Twitter by 𝐍𝐞𝐰𝐬, whatever, the man can be seen posted up against a building with this, and this is the article from the Post-Millennial, with a self-inflicted knife wound to the neck while exposing his genitalia as he peed on the sidewalk. A car is doused in flames on the other side of the street, and it's going up in flames, and it's a nice little SUV. So in this video, we hone in on the car, we hone in on the guy, and like the person shooting this is like, oh my gosh, I cannot believe this is happening. They're literally, that's what they're stating is, you know, only in Seattle are you going to find this kind of nonsense. That's not necessarily true. You could probably find it in Portland. You could probably find it in the Tenderloin. You could probably find it in lots of areas, San Francisco, New York. But standing on the sidewalk, taking a whiz while you watch your car burn up as you're, you know, doing some self-inflicting knife damage to your neck of all places. I mean, that's a tough one. That is a tough act to follow. It'd be difficult to find crazier and more out of place and yet totally calm, because throughout this entire video, the guy is just standing there in one spot. And I was thinking that guy's got to be wildly drunk. And then I'm like, nope, he's not teetering back and forth like a drunk person. He's on something that has really wrecked his head, because you don't do this normally. All right, let's watch this video super quick. Car on fire. Yep. Burning. Angle over to guy taking whiz, jabbing self in neck. All right. We got that angle. Yep. Back to the car. Still on fire. It's going up. It's billowing smoke. Back to the guy. There's a stranger walking up to the guy to see what's going on. Don't get too close there. Back to the car. On fire. Flames even larger. Back to the guy. Still peeing. Been peeing since the beginning of this video. Back to the car. Flames are going over the top of the car now. Said car is almost all engulfed in flames. Guy still peeing. Other strangers around watching the ongoing scene going, what the F? Car. Now, flames are almost all the way to the back of the car by the end of the video. That is literally what somebody captured out their window. I mean, just insane. Not reasonable, right? Seattle police sources told the Post-Millennial that officers in the East Precinct, that is the place with CHOP, that is the CHOP precinct, officers in the East Precinct and crisis response team responded to calls of a car on fire in an intersection and a man possibly bleeding. I actually didn't see any blood, but he had his hand up to his neck the whole time, and the video was taken from kind of far away. Upon arrival, Seattle Police Department officers located the man with a 3 to 4 inch knife lodged in his neck. Oh, that's going to leave a mark. When officers approached the man, he took the knife out and proceeded to stab himself 2 more times in the neck. I mean, don't be a quitter. Keep going. See what happens, right? That's according to 2 sources. Not being cooperative with police, officers reportedly used a taser on the subject and started performing life-saving measures, like sealing up that gaping wound on his neck that he did to himself. I mean, my thought that just keeps coming is this has got to be that new meth, right? I mean, when else do you PCP, whatever it is, back in the day when they used to say, people would do just crazy stuff when I was a kid, and you'd blame it on PCP. Now you blame it on the new meth, I think. Officers saved the man's life, as Seattle Police Department told the Post-Millennial. Before officers responded to the call, the man suffering from the alleged mental health crisis, well, we don't know, but maybe it's mental health crisis. Maybe it's just the damn drugs he took that just made him wig out. Could that be? Yeah, it could. But we don't really know. So we're going to go with he's having a mental health crisis because all that stuff going on, that's not good. He stopped his car in the middle of the 18th Avenue and South Jackson Street in the Capitol Hill area of Seattle. All right, unfortunately, Post-Millennial, this is not in Capitol Hill. This is in the Central District, a little bit further east. If you want to Google it, it's in the 1800 block of South Jackson Street in Seattle. And they go on to say it's notoriously known as the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone. It's not. He's further east of that. By probably, let's see, 11th, and this is 18th. So 7 blocks, about half a mile. He's half a mile east. He then allegedly set his vehicle on fire after dousing both himself and the vehicle in gasoline, as you do. So this guy has got gasoline, he's got matches, and he's got a knife to stab himself with. I mean, where else are you going to get this kind of story, right? Seattle Fire Department also responded to the scene and transported the subject to a nearby hospital. The man's current condition is unknown, although officers told the Post-Millennial that he is expected to live. Well, not for long if he keeps up these kind of antics. Yeah, so there's that. That is literally kind of the state of Seattle. And I was looking back through some of my footage on some of the stuff I've taken in downtown Seattle. This guy just like slinks past me. And it was literally a guy who kind of looked like Gollum, from the movies. And he's got the big ears, kind of got the bald head. And he kind of slinked past me. And I slowed down the footage and I looked at him and I'm like, damn, son, you do not look well. The guy had no shirt on, no shoes, he messed up, dirty jeans. And I didn't even notice him because I'm shooting some footage going down a public street in downtown Seattle. And this kind of thing happens. And I think there's more and more of this stuff that as we just get used to it, it's like, oh, it's okay. I mean, a guy really had to go to the restroom and yeah, he took some drugs earlier, but he's had some mental issues. You think? And so we just need to be tolerant of our fellow human being who's watching his own car go up in flames and he's just taking care of business over on the sidewalk there. I mean, we need to be tolerant of these people and, we need to love our fellow human being. Well, that's why you draw the line at drugs that kind of allow people to think that this type of behavior is okay, because clearly he thinks it's okay to be doing this. And the people slinking by me in downtown Seattle, they don't look like real human beings. They look like another, I don't know, species that looks a little bit subhuman. The guy doing his neck with the knife, he looked normal. Wildly normal. And that's what kind of the whole scene is like. All right. He's so calmly standing there, just watching his car go up in flames. Initially, I don't think anybody knew that it was his car. They thought he was just a bystander on the sidewalk, just watching what was going on. And somebody's car was just going up in flames. We didn't know what happened. Was there a wreck? We had no idea. But this crazy stuff that's going on, we're kind of getting used to. I mean, this just, Seattle is thriving. It's just another day. I mean, this is pretty normal stuff. I mean, you see this all the time. People make comments where I react to things in downtown Seattle because I don't spend a ton of time in downtown areas because of the screaming people. That's not normal. And people leave comments, well, screaming's pretty normal in downtown. That's the problem. It shouldn't be. You got a bunch of crazy people living there that shouldn't be living there and doing all this other wild stuff where you're like, okay, that's an interesting video. That's going to be watched, probably a couple million times before it's all said and done, because that's a freak show that shouldn't be happening. And yet it is. And so I think, what's happened is things have gotten a little out of control. Things have gotten just a scooch out of control. They're not reasonable. And so we need to understand that, when you decriminalize drugs and you let people do their own thing, and then you dump everybody out of the mental institutions and you got a lot of people walking around, all of a sudden, this kind of becomes pretty normal. It's like, it's not that big of a deal. And the people on the corner watching this go on, their minds had to have been blown. I'm back to the video now. Their minds had to have been blown. Like, I am literally watching this go down. I mean, what are we doing here? Got to watch the video. It's pretty wild. All right. I've beaten this one to death, but the bottom line is this is not reasonable. This is not normal. This is not typical. And that's why we're talking about it here on News for Reasonable People, because there's a lot of stuff going on that doesn't make any sense. And normal people, reasonable people, they're calling it out. And I'm calling it out on a little bit bigger scale. I'm calling it out on a podcast with close to 60,000 people. Normally, you're not going to find much in the way of, podcasts covering this kind of thing, because it's kind of one of those stories where you're like, all right, what's the point? And the point is, yeah, we've kind of crossed a line here and we're into some territory where, it's just simply not reasonable. But you knew that. That's why you're here to the bitter end. Thanks for joining. That's it for me. We'll catch up soon. What a story, right? Watch the video if you can. Talk soon. Bye for now.